Hello everybody from Plant Reviews UK. Today is the 25th of February and the star of today's video is my beautiful Rhyncholaeliocattleya Burdekin Wonder Lakeland. This is a plant that I got the chance to buy for, it was about £30, but that day there was I was lucky because there were quite a few orchids for sale, because there was a person who was dismantling his orchid collection and sent them to the nursery, to the nursery I bought this plant from. That is Lawrence Hobbs orchid, so I bought quite a few of them. It's actually a very good nursery, especially if you love Cattleyas. Lawrence Hobbs is a very nice range of Cattleyas, especially now after Brexit. It's been so complicated to buy them from Europe, and it's not easy to find them in the United Kingdom for sale. So I am very happy I bought this plant, well, a few years ago, must have been at least 3 or 4 years ago. And I was very lucky because this is really already, I could already see that was one of the most it is one of the most beautiful hybrids, but I didn't know that was also one of the most fragrant. And for my viewers who know about my channel and my passion for fragrant plants, they know how much I love perfumes in the flower world, and Cattleyas that were already my favorite orchids, even or when I was already seeing pictures of them in books without even knowing how perfume they were. Was just love at first sight when I saw a Cattleya plant in real life with its beautiful perfumed flowers. Please remember, anyway, not all Cattleyas are fragrant, only some of them. It is true there's quite a lot of them that are fragrant, but some Cattleyas are not fragrant, or some others has not really a very nice fragrance, like I know Cattleya persivaliana. What I've read about Cattleya persivaliana doesn't have a nice fragrance, but most Cattleyas anyway have a nice fragrance. Just of course double check with the species, find information about the species or the hybrids, and check as well not only on reviews on about what shops selling orchids online say, but also on blogs and forums to actually see what other people think about the orchids you would like to purchase, if you are looking mainly for fragrance in addition, obviously, to the physical aspect of the orchid. Said that, this is a hybrid that is quite old. It has been obtained by S. Scalia in 1987, and this is a hybrid between Rhyncholaeliocattleya Donna Kimura and Rhyncholaeliocattleya Sylvia Frey. Very good website if you are looking for the ancestry of your orchid hybrids is this one, orchidroots.com, and you find a lot of information about orchid hybrids, and I always go to have a look at it when I am looking for Cattleya ancestry. There are different clones, or I don't know, say probably varieties should be a better word for the Burdekin Wonder. This is, for example, the Burdekin Wonder Loredana. You can see it's pink, however, mine is the Burdekin Wonder Lakeland. And if I remember correctly, also mine has AM/AAOS. However, in my tag has just been labeled as Burdekin Wonder Lakeland. This is a plant that has a very famous grandparent as a pollen in the pollen parent orchid. And one of the grandparents of this plant is Cattleya bowbells. That is one of the most famous white orchids cross, and it was obtained in 1945 at Black and Flory, and actually it has been one of the most appreciated and prized hybrids in the Cattleya world. However, if you want to have a look about the species ancestors, always on orchid roots, you can find that most of the genes of this cross are from Cattleya mossi, anyway, Gaskeliana, Traiane, Rhyncholaeliocattleya, Cattleya dowiana, Warshawiczi, Warneri, Purpurata, and Labiata also contributed all to this beautiful, beautiful result. Like all Cattleyas, this hybrid is a sympodial orchid, so basically from it grows kind of in length rather than upwards, say like a Vanda or a Phalaenopsis. They grow mainly upwards, or anyway through an axis. Instead this one grows sideways as well, in addition to obviously go forward, and you can see that the pseudobulbs go all, they have quite a serpentine, so a bit like a snake way of growing, and while the plants grows also from the bud that is going forward, there might come other, sorry, not bud, new growths. They might start also new growths sideways as well, and in this way the plant become bigger, and also they become more floriferous, because Cattleyas blooms from the new pseudobulbs, from the new growths. Obviously, the more new growths are in an orchid, in a sympodial orchid, the more flower it will produce if properly cared for. This orchid is not particularly big, but it's not particularly small either. I would say it is a medium-sized Cattleya. It is about, the pseudobulbs are about 15 centimeter long, and as well as the leaves are about 15 centimeters long. You can actually see the comparison between the flower and the leaves. The flower is actually bigger than the leaf, and the leaf is about the size of my palm. The length of my palm, I would say. Also about 15 centimeters, but well, you can see that the flowers covers both my palms and also my part of my fingers as well. Must be at least 15 or 17, so no, I would say probably 17 centimeters in diameter. This is actually the biggest flower of my Cattleya hybrids. I never had in my collection a Cattleya hybrid that blooms with such a hugely sized of flower, especially in comparison to the plant. And in my collection there is only one full species that blooms with a bigger flower, and that's the Cattleya Warshawiczi. But the Cattleya Warshawiczi is a huge Cattleya. That's my biggest plant in my orchid collection, and the pseudobulbs and the leaves are at least double the size of this plant. But the flowers are certainly not double the size of the flower, they are just a little bit bigger than this flower. On top of that, Cattleya Warshawiczi, that still is definitely one of my favorite plants in my orchid collection, doesn't have, not only doesn't have these huge upper petals, they are quite, they're a bit more narrow, they're quite narrow in Cattleya Warshawiczi. but it also not as fragrant. Cattleya varshavictia, regardless of the huge size of the flowers, have a fragrance that is very light. It's a very pleasant fragrance. It's like kind of hyacinth-like, but this one is just incredible. Now it's afternoon and I can still smell it here, but in the morning can really make my bedroom, my whole bedroom perfume of citrus. I can actually smell the citrus scent as soon as I enter in my bedroom. Is one of the most fragrant Cattleyas in my collection. And actually when the flower starts opening, it smells a kind of jasmine, and still very nicely, very pleasant, not very intense, but when it's fully open, the scent changes. Now, for example, it's fully open and it is like pure citrus, very intense. Not like a delicate jasmine fragrance as when the flower was just starting opening. The color of the flower, you can see in my Burdekin Wonder Lakeland, is pure white, both on the three tepals and on the two upper petals, while the lower petal, that is also called the labellum or the lip of the orchid, is still white, but the internal part is bright yellow. And of course you can see the column in the inner part of the labellum. That is where the female and male reproductive organs of the orchid are. On top of the huge size of the flower, you can see how beautifully frilly the lip is, as well as the upper petals. And even the profile of the orchid is really gorgeous. Actually, you can see it against my black toaster. I'm just in the kitchen because I have a little bit more space here. You can see how the two lower tepals are curved backwards, while the upper tepal is curved frontwards, and the upper petals, they are quite flat, the upper petals, where the lip protrudes really forward, and this frilliness is really intricate. Of course, this orchid is a Rhyncholaeliocattleya digbyana among the ancestors. So Rhyncholaeliocattleya digbyana is one of the most used species to give frilliness to the orchid. However, as you can see among the other ancestors, also other Cattleya species are quite frilly, including, of course, the Mossie, but also the Gaskeliana, as well as many others, and this is the Rhyncholaeliocattleya digbyana. You can see that in the digbyana it's not only frilly, it's really filiform. The shape, they really looks like threads coming out of the labellum. And even the Uyana, you can see the frilliness, and I also actually made a video. That's a beautiful Varshavictia, of course. And that's the Warneri, and well, just to finish the ancestor, let's have a look to the Purpurata, as well as the Labiata, that they are a little bit less frilly than this one. About the way I cultivate this orchid, I cultivate it in semi-hydroponics, so I have this Leca pot that is in water. You can see a little bit of water here. There's some algae that still manage to grow, but the orchid doesn't really mind the algae in the water. And this is actually a very ugly way to keep an orchid in semi-hydro, but actually very useful, because I can keep the water level. I can keep an eye of the water level very clearly I fill the reservoir of water when it's about 1 centimeters of height, and when I see the water is evaporating that much, I usually fill it until here, so about I would say, yeah, 3 centimeters, 3 fingers of height. This is I decided to convert the majority of my orchids to semi-hydro, and I have to say that the Cattleyas usually convert beautifully, and it's such an easy way to cultivate a Cattleya. However, other orchids don't really like this cultivation. Indeed, I have lots of problems in acclimating, for example, Brassias to this cultivation, or Oncidiums as well. They don't really like it, at least in my conditions. I live in the UK, so maybe the semi-hydro is they leave them too much wet in the bottom, but actually too dry on the top, because the problem with the semi-hydro is that the upper part can actually dry quite easily. So if the orchids doesn't have these fleshy roots like most Cattleyas, but it's very very narrow roots as an Oncidium, they don't really like the semi-hydro. However, closing about the semi-hydro, another great way to cultivate this orchid, like all Cattleyas, is pure bark. When I bought this orchid was indeed in a mix of bark and another medium. It looked like a sponge, so it was a mix, but I converted it to semi-hydro when the orchid starting putting new roots. And it is very important to convert to semi-hydro if you want to, when the orchid is putting new roots, because the old roots are not used to this quite a wet environment, especially if the orchid is kept in bark that is quite dry most of the time. So the old roots will probably die, and will be the new roots only that will start adapting to the new condition. But in this way you know for sure when how much water the orchid needs, because you physically see it, how much water is in the pot, if you have a transparent pot or a measuring jar like I do. About the lights, I cultivate this plant in an east-facing windowsill, so it receives direct sunlight in the morning until about midday. Then it receives still bright but indirect light for the rest of the day. This is an orchid, and it's a Cattleya that need about medium intensity light. It doesn't need so much intense sunlight as other varieties or species, like for example Cattleya Varshavicii or Rhyncholaeliocattleya digbiana. They basically eat sunlight. I need to keep them all year round, even in the hottest summer, as closest to the windowsill as possible, because they really need a lot of light. Again, in the United Kingdom, where we don't have much intense sun anyway, so if you live in a warmer area, say in southern European countries, of course, I would probably suggest still an east-facing windowsill for these plants. Other than that, I have to say that it is Cattleyas in general, and this orchid, this variety in particular, it's been very easy to cultivate. And of course, I am really happy to have purchased it. I was very lucky to have purchased this beautiful hybrid that is not very common on the market, especially again in the United Kingdom, because it has been quite difficult to get orchids from Europe after Brexit, because the free trade ended. So now all plants bought from Europe need a phytosanitary certificate that increases a lot the costs of the orchid and of the shipping as well. But however, as I said, I bought this orchid from Lawrence Hobbs. So if you want, I will put the link on the description. I'm not too sure if you will be able to find this orchid there, because even when I bought it was the only specimen available at the Lawrence Hobbs nursery. However, Lawrence Hobbs usually has a lot of orchids, including a nice variety of Cattleyas. So if you like these plants and you don't have the possibility to import them from Europe, I really would suggest go to have a look on the website, and hopefully go to have a look at the nursery if you can, if you live in Sussex or nearby, because it is definitely worth a visit if you like Cattleyas. As usual, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Again, this plant I keep it indoors on the windowsill in my bedroom all year round. Obviously, if you live in a warm climate, you might put it outside in summer, or if you live it in the tropics, of course, it can be all year round outside. It depends by the climate, but I would say for if you live in I live in the USDA Zone 8, I live in the south east of England, in Kent, so if you live in temperate climates, definitely these are plants need to stay indoors, but you don't necessarily need a greenhouse to have these varieties blooming. They can really bloom without any problems, even just kept on a windowsill like many other indoor plants. As usual, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, it would be great if you could please give it a thumbs up, and if you like this video or the other videos on my channel, it would be great if you can please subscribe. Of course, if you have any questions, I will be more than happy to answer you, and also if you have any suggestion for fragrant orchids, or in general for fragrant plants, please write it in the comments below, and we'll be more than happy to read your comments and hopefully purchase the plants that you are recommending. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.